Okay, everybody, welcome back to week 13 of the Spread Pick Show with no Mike, only Andrew. Mike is feeling a little under the weather today. His voice is scratchy. He doesn't feel like talking on here today. So I decided that I would take over and hopefully give you guys a semi-entertaining show. So the first thing we do on here is we go over the previous week, week 12, how we did. So I'll go over all of those games right now. In the Thursday night window, which I guess was the Thanksgiving games, obviously, we both in the first one picked Chicago to cover the -3. They lost. They only won by 2. In the next game, the Raiders versus Dallas. Mike took Dallas -7.5. I took the Raiders. The Raiders won that game outright. We both felt pretty good about the Bills in the late window there. They were a -6. We both took them, and we got the win. The first 1:00 game, Falcons versus Jaguars. I took the Jaguars. Mike took the Falcons. He got the win there. Then the Jets versus Houston. Mike took Houston -2.5. The Jets outright won. I took the Jets. Tennessee at New England. We both took New England there, and they had a really impressive game against the Titans. My Eagles versus Mike's Giants. We both went with Philly covering the -3.5, and the Eagles somehow lost that game. I shouldn't say somehow. They did lose the turnover differential 4-0, but I mean, man, it's got to be disappointing if you're a Giants fan, winning the turnover battle 4-0 and still being in that game until the last second, the last pass. And if it wasn't for a drop pass by Jalen Reagor there, the Eagles take the lead late. So it was unfortunate. I was in attendance. It really stunk. But you know what? The Eagles are a lot better than the Giants. I know that. I don't really take the head-to-head too seriously. I think the Eagles just had a bad week, and the Giants got lucky and caught them at a bad week. The next game was Steelers at Bengals. We both took the Bengals in what seemed like a bounce back spot, and we were right there. Tampa Bay at Indianapolis. I took Indianapolis. Mike took Tampa Bay. He got the win there with Tampa Bay -3. But if you watch that game, it probably should have been a push because if Indianapolis doesn't let up that late touchdown there with 20 seconds to go to Leonard Fournette, it would have been a 3-point game. The next game was Carolina at Miami. I took Miami. Mike took Carolina to cover the 2 points. Unfortunately, Miami won that game outright for him, so I got the win there. Los Angeles, the Chargers at Denver. I took the Chargers. I thought maybe they could beat the Broncos by a field goal. I didn't think that was too much of a stretch, but obviously it was. I got the loss there, and Mike got the win there with the Broncos. Minnesota at San Fran. I said last week, I've never really been able to gauge Minnesota this year. So I picked Minnesota because I honestly didn't feel great about them. And whenever I do feel good or don't feel great, I usually pick the wrong side. So I went with my opposite opinion, and it proved me wrong again. Another Minnesota Vikings loss for me. Mike got the win there with San Fran. The Rams at Green Bay. We both thought it was going to be a bounce back spot for the Rams. I mean, they've lost, I think 3 straight at this point. They've been struggling really, really badly. And I think we both assumed that it'd be a bounce back spot for them. Later in the week, as we started talking more, I think we both agreed that maybe we probably should have taken the Packers in this game, but you know what? We didn't on Wednesday, and that's all that matters. We both got the loss with the Rams there, as obviously Green Bay outright won that game. Cleveland at Baltimore on Sunday Night Football. We both took Cleveland. I thought Cleveland could have won that game going into the week. And obviously with Lamar Jackson throwing 3 picks, I was pretty confident that maybe Cleveland would be able to almost dominate that game. But Baker Mayfield and their offense looked very, very poor. Were not able to respond to any of the turnovers that basically, the Ravens handed to him. I think Lamar Jackson threw 4 picks on 4 consecutive drives. Anyways, we both took the Browns, and we got the loss there. And then in the Monday night game, we both took Washington, which was a win for us. They were a -1 at home against Seattle, and they won that game. It was pretty close at the end. I think it was a 2-point game. A 2-point conversion from the Seahawks would have most likely put that game into overtime, but an incomplete pass, a bad read by Russell Wilson, if you will, gave Mike and I that win. So I won't do the math because I just don't have it in front of me right now. But next video, you'll see, it'll be added onto our record here. So I'm going to go over the week 13 picks, and I thought it would be kind of fun to actually pick them while I'm talking to you guys. So Mike's given me his picks, which is the opposite of how it works usually. Since Mike hosts this show, I usually give him my picks before we start. And, he gets to see all my picks. And sometimes he picks against me on purpose. So I'm actually going to give you guys my analysis, my thought process through these picks live. I haven't looked at too many of these games. Some of these games I have a good idea of who I want to pick, but we'll go to the first matchup, Dallas at New Orleans. And if you watch this show a lot, you know that I'm a pretty good Thursday night picker. And Mike was almost hesitant to send his pick without knowing mine on Thursday because of how good I've been. I made sure that didn't happen. This is a rare scenario, so I made sure that I knew his pick without him knowing mine. He took Dallas to cover the -4.5 on the road against the Saints. I felt decent about Dallas in this game, but I always remember, Sean Payton coaches his team very well no matter who's on the field. And for New Orleans to be a 4.5-point underdog at home in a primetime game, I don't know if I feel comfortable with Dallas. And they haven't been playing well. I know New Orleans hasn't either. I don't think New Orleans has won a game in November, but it is December now, if that means anything to anybody out there. I just don't feel great about Dallas at the moment. I think, like I said before, the Saints are a well-coached team. So I am going to take New Orleans covering the +4.5 at home. I like the 4.5 number because if the Saints get out to a field goal at any point in the game, the Dallas has to come back with a touchdown and a field goal to end up covering. So I feel pretty good about that spread. I kind of told Mike before I hopped on here that I would pick Dallas. I kind of, just said that so he would be surprised when he gets this whole video clip that I actually went with the Saints. So hopefully I get the win there. First game in the 1:00 window is Arizona at Chicago. Chicago is a -8. I don't think that's correct. I think Mike got that spread wrong. Just looking at it, I really doubt that Chicago is a -8. I'm not going to play with that. Arizona is obviously the -8, and Mike is going to be picking Chicago in this one. And I think I'm going to agree with him. I don't think Chicago's that terrible. And I'm not sure about the status of Justin Fields and Andy Dalton at this point, but Arizona really hasn't shown to me in the last few weeks that they can really blow anybody out. And I think Kyler Murray is going to play this week, so that will help, but he's had a lot of weeks of rest, a lot of weeks off the field. I don't know if he's going to be as crisp right away. I still think Arizona wins this game, but I think it's a tough ask at this time of the year to go to Chicago and win by more than a touchdown, no matter how good you are, because Chicago always shows up defensively. Usually that's the case. Sometimes they don't, but at Soldier Field, their defense usually shows up. It's a very tough environment to play in, and obviously in the wintertime, it's even tougher. So I'm going to agree with Mike there, and I'm going to go with Chicago. On to the next game. We have the Eagles, my Eagles, at the New York Jets, their second consecutive week playing at MetLife Stadium. Philly is a -6.5. Mike is going to go with Philly here, and I'm going to have to agree with him. I think this is a good bounce-back week for Philadelphia. I think Jalen Hurts, the leader that he is in that room, will gather these guys again and say, hey, look, that game was on me. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. They turned the ball over 4 times, but they were still in it, right? They were still competitive until the end. The Jets aren't a great team. They just came off a win against the Houston Texans where Zach Wilson kind of looked okay. That one pick that he had wasn't really his fault, because he's looking at Ty Johnson. He's like, okay, let me flip it to him. And then Ty Johnson, the last thing he sees is almost Zach Wilson looked like he's going to run the ball. So Ty Johnson turns around, Zach Wilson throws that pick. I think that if the Eagles win that game last week, that this spread is much higher than 6.5. I'm going to take them. I think they can win by at least a touchdown. I would hope for my sanity that they can beat the Jets by at least a touchdown. I know there have been a lot more teams that have been favored by a lot more points against the Jets this year. And frankly, I just don't think the Jets are that much better with Zach Wilson. I think the Eagles win by at least a touchdown. In the next game, we have Indianapolis at Houston. Indianapolis is a -9 over there in Houston, and Mike's going to take Indianapolis. I don't know how to feel about this one. I think Houston is a better team that they let off last week. Because I think Tyrod Taylor commands that offense far better than Davis Webb. And I think at times they're a pretty competent team. I've been a big Colts guy all year long. I think they are a better than how do I put this? I think they're better than everybody says that they are. They were pretty competitive in that Tampa Bay game. A couple turnovers by Carson Wentz there late in the game led to their defeat. But I'm going to agree with Mike on this one because I just think they're the far better team. And I think after a loss like that, almost similar to the way Jalen Hurts and the Eagles lost, where it was down to the end and a couple crucial turnovers, kind of ruined the game. I think Carson Wentz and the Colts have a bounce back week. I think they're a playoff team. They've been playing like one recently, and this is one of the easiest teams that they've had in the past 3 weeks. I know they played the Bucs last week and then the Bills the week before that, and they've been playing pretty competitive against some elite squads. So I think they can win this game by 10 points. I'm going to take the Colts. On to the next game, the Chargers at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a -3. And I'm going to go with the Chargers on this one because I think now, Cincinnati got that big win. I think now maybe people are back on the Cincinnati bandwagon. And I think the Chargers are dying for a win. You know what I mean? They really are hungry for a win. And I think they play the Bengals really competitive in this game. We've seen before that when people are high on the Bengals slow down. Right. So I don't see why that can't happen again. The Chargers are very iffy. Their defense is bad. And I think that's a big spot for Joe Burrow and their really versatile offense to exploit. But I think overall, the Chargers will eventually find it at some point near the end of the year, and it's getting to that point. So I'm going to take the Chargers plus the 3, and Mike's going to go with the Bengals minus the 3. The next game, Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Now, this is an interesting one because at points in the season, Atlanta's looked like an okay team. I don't know their record off the top of my head, but I think they have 5 or 6 wins. So they're not a terrible team. Tampa Bay's at Atlanta, and they are Tampa Bay is a -11 in that game. Mike went with Tampa Bay. I'm going to have to disagree with him on this one because Tampa Bay just has not been the same team on the road this year as they've been at home. And maybe this is a relaxed spot, a look ahead week. They're playing the Falcons, who I said maybe have 5 or 6 wins, but they're not really that great of a team, but they're not that bad either. They're not that bad to the point where I think they would absolutely get demolished in this game and lose by double digits. I think they could crawl back into this game late, cover the 11 points and give me a win there. So I'm going to go with the Falcons. The next game, Mike's New York Giants at the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, the Giants coming off that win against the Eagles last week. Miami is a -4.5 at home. Mike's going to go with the Giants, and I'm going to have to agree with him on this one because as good as Miami has played lately, I just think that this is maybe a week that they play down their opponent a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Miami's defense has been playing tremendous, and the Giants defense, I'm not going to say with Freddie Kitchens because Freddie Kitchens has only had 1 week to operate that offense essentially. But, they didn't look impressive with Freddie Kitchens last week. It didn't look like too much of a drop off from Jason Garrett. It didn't look really astounding to me. So I don't feel great about picking the Giants here because Miami has been on such a roll. But at the same time, Miami's not one of those elite teams that can just keep pounding and pounding week after week. I do think that they are a little worse than they're playing lately. So I do think they have a letdown week. I don't think they lose the game, but I do think the Giants can, lose this game by about a field goal or so, which then Mike and I would be right. The next game, Minnesota at Detroit. Minnesota is a -7. Mike's going to go with Minnesota here. I'm going to take Detroit. And I'd probably get this game wrong because, as I mentioned before, when I pick these Minnesota games, I consistently get them wrong. Whether I go with Minnesota or I go against Minnesota, it doesn't pan out well for me. So I'm going to take Detroit because they've been in so many close games this year, and the Vikings as a whole have been in a lot of close games this year with teams that maybe they shouldn't be close with, and against teams that are very good. They've played a lot of great teams very closely, but I think Detroit plays decently competitive in this game, and they don't have to play super competitive the whole entire game. I mean, it is a 7-point spread. They can kind of leak into the game, late, like they have done in the past and cover this spread. I feel good about the Lions here. They're a very unpredictable team, but at the same time, they've been competitive in a lot of games they shouldn't be, just like the Vikings have. So I'm going to take the Lions here. Maybe this is their first win. I doubt it, but I do think that they cover the points in their home stadium. The next game is Jacksonville at the Rams. The Rams are a -13, and I just don't know how you take the Rams in this situation. but I'm going to. And I look at this spread, and by the way, Mike is going to go with the Jaguars. He's going to disagree with me on this one. The Rams need a big win, and I'm not one of those guys that they lose whatever 2-3 straight, and all of a sudden I think they're a really bad football team. I think they're a good football team, and I think at this point with this spread, maybe they're a little underrated. It is -13, but the Jaguars are really bad, and they've been really bad lately, and they haven't really had the focus because they haven't had primetime games, and they're in Jacksonville, right? So they haven't been in the spotlight as much as the Rams. So people are starting to notice the Rams struggling, but not really notice how bad the Jaguars have been lately. I think Trevor Lawrence threw one touchdown pass in all of November, right? So he has not been playing well himself. I think the Rams, this is a crush spot for them. I think they bounce back against a very bad opponent, and they absolutely dominate and maybe give themselves some confidence for the rest of the year. I'm going to take the Rams -13. And as I mentioned, Mike is going to take the Jaguars plus the 13 in Los Angeles. The next game here, I don't know if this is, I think we already began the four o'clock window. Washington at Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a -2.5. Mike went with the Raiders here, and I'm going to have to agree with him because as good as Washington has played lately, I think this is a good week for the Raiders. They're kind of crawling back into things. They had a really, really impressive offensive week against the Cowboys after a couple weeks there where their offense just looked horrible. One of my dad's friends is a big Raiders fan, and last night he was showing me a bunch of screenshots of the Raiders against the Giants game, and Derek Carr was just missing a ton of wide open reads, which, they probably should have won that game if he makes some of those reads there. I don't think they've been as bad as the score shows. They've had people that are getting open consistently. Derek Carr hasn't been finding them, but he seemed to be able to get a stride in that Dallas game. So I think they bounce back again, and I think they have a really, really good week against a Washington team that is high right now, right? But we've seen time and time again that Washington defense struggles, and they're without their worst defensive player in Chase Young coming off the edge. I think they struggle against this team. I like the Raiders covering by at least a field goal. The next game is Baltimore at Pittsburgh, one of the best rivalries in NFL history. Baltimore is a -4.5. I'm going to take Baltimore here, and Mike is going to go with the Steelers. I think Baltimore is far better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really don't care how badly Baltimore played last week, and that almost helps me because I think good teams know how to bounce back. Lamar Jackson took that game hard. He obviously after the game was like, yes, this is all on me. Even though we won the game, I need to do better. He was like 4 interceptions. That's awful. Right. He's taken ownership for that loss. And I think they bounce back in a very competitive game, rivalry week, and they beat up on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The only thing that concerns me here is a 4.5 spread in this big of a rivalry. It could be a very close game down the wire at the end, but Pittsburgh just has not shown to me that they are able to cover spreads like this against a team like the Ravens. So I'm going to take the Ravens until the Steelers start to prove me wrong. The next game, San Francisco at Seattle. San Fran is a -3.5. I'm going to go with Seattle here. And I think the only reason I'm going to go with Seattle here is because I think most of the money is going to be on San Fran this game because they've started to figure it out a little bit. They're a -3.5 in Seattle. I don't know if I mentioned that, but a lot of people think they've started to figure it out a little bit. And I agree. Over the last few weeks, they've looked like a good football team. They can compete with anybody, but like I said, most of the money is going to be on them this game, I would think, because I think it's low enough, and Seattle's just coming off some horrible, horrible losses. It's low enough to the point where people would be fairly confident in picking the 49ers, and that's where I go the other way. I might be wrong, but I usually don't like to pick with who everybody else thinks is going to cover the spread, so I'm going to go with Seattle covering the +3.5 in their home stadium. Not to mention, Seattle's a horrible place to play for if you're a visiting team. It's really bad there. I shouldn't say bad. It's hard to play there. The fans are riled up. Maybe not as riled up because they are 3-8, the Seahawks, but it's still a hard place to play. The 12th man in Seattle. I'll take Seattle +3.5. The next game, Sunday Night Football. Denver at Kansas City. Kansas City, I believe, coming off the bye. They're a -10. Mike's going to go with Kansas City. And I'm going to go with Kansas City. And now the only reason I'm going with Kansas City in this game is because Mike has seemingly been able to read or get a sense of Denver all year long. Me, on the other hand, I really have not. I think the last time I picked a successful Denver game was when the Eagles played them, and they absolutely crushed them. I think Mike went with the Broncos there, so maybe that's a little concerning for me, but he's been able to tell how good the Broncos are, and he's guessed a lot of these spreads right so far this year. So I'm going to trust his judgment, and I'm going to take the Chiefs with him. They're coming off the bye. Andy Reid is probably one of the scariest coaches to play coming off a bye. Very, very good. And they look very good going into the bye. So they have confidence coming out of the bye. I think maybe this is a crush spot for Kansas City against a Denver team that's, had some nice wins here and there, but I don't think they're at the level of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs probably play a pretty rough and tough blowout type game. As for Monday night, it's New England at Buffalo. Buffalo is a -2.5. I'm going to go New England here. I really don't see why Mike would pick Buffalo. New England has been hot, red hot, and maybe this is a game that Buffalo in recent weeks has started to circle on their schedule because the Patriots have overtaken them in the AFC East. But I think the Patriots are just as hungry, if not more hungry, to go out there and beat the Bills, because the Bills had high expectations going into the year. Everybody thought going into the year that the Patriots would be a subpar team with Mac Jones as their quarterback, or, before Mac Jones is even announced, with Cam Newton as their quarterback. They were supposed to be a subpar team, and here they are at the top of the AFC East. I think the record is 8-4, almost at the top of the AFC. They're playing really, really good football. I'm not going to pick against them until they prove me wrong. Buffalo is favored here at home. I think that's the way it should be, but I honestly think this should be closer to a pick 'em. But it is 2.5. I like that. I'm taking New England. I think that they're going to win the game. Some favorite bets now that we're done with this weekend slate. Mike went with the Eagles to cover the 6.5 at the New York Jets, and the Bengals to cover the 3 in Cincinnati. I agreed with him on the Eagle pick, but I did go against them on the Bengal pick. I did pick the Chargers. As for my favorite bets, I'm just trying to look across the board here at what I really feel pretty comfortable about. Nothing really screams at me right away. I think my favorite bet is going to be my 2 favorite bets. I'm going to take New England covering the +2.5 in Buffalo. I think they outright win that game. I feel pretty comfortable about New England. They'll probably fall off at some point, and then I'll have to reassess. But I hope that this week is not that week. And then I'll take I'll go with Baltimore covering the -4.5 in Pittsburgh. I just feel like they're the better overall team. I went over that whole spiel when I was going over the game, but Pittsburgh just has not been able to prove anything to me so far this year. I don't think they're that great of a team. And to be honest with you, if you ask me, this isn't like Pennsylvania bias. I am an Eagles fan, but I really don't care that much about the Steelers, from a rivalry standpoint. I just don't think they're a very good football team. And I think Baltimore Ravens they had a really bad week, even though they won. And I think it's a good bounce back and crush spot for them against a rivalry. They'll be fired up before the game. I'm sure the Steelers will as well, but I think the Ravens get the best of them. I think that's it. We're not going to, I don't have anybody to chat with after, going over these games. So I think that's going to end it. Hopefully Mike is back next week. He's feeling a little better. I'm a little under the weather myself, but I pick my games confidently. I come on here and I give you guys a show. Nah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm a little under the weather. My whole family has kind of been under the weather. So maybe my voice sounds a little different. I can't really tell. So I hopped on here because I thought, it would be all right. I could survive. Thanks everybody for watching. I don't really know how to do any of these outros. Mike stinks at picking. The Giants are going to lose. The Eagles are going to win. And we'll see you guys for the Week 13 recap next week and the Week 14 picks. Hopefully I can overtake Mike. We are tied, as I said, at 87, 91, and 2. So that's pretty nice. It's pretty nice for you guys at this point in the year. It's pretty nice for us to be competitive for you guys. So I hope you guys are enjoying it, and we'll see you guys in Week 14.